Yana sat alone at home, her mind clouded with sadness. Despite being 6 months pregnant, she couldn't shake off these feelings of despair. Just as her thoughts seemed to consume her, the doorbell rang, interrupting her solitude. It was her dear friend Nastya, a few years younger than her, but a constant source of support. They had become fast friends when Yana and her husband Pedya moved into the neighborhood, where Nastya had already been residing with her parents. "Hey Januzia, what's wrong? You look so down," Nastya exclaimed, her concern evident in her eyes. Yana paused for a moment, contemplating whether she should confide in her friend about her troubles. Finally, summoning her courage, she decided to share her misfortune with Nastya. "Nastya, I think Pedya is cheating on me," Yana confessed, taking in a deep breath to steady herself. Nastya looked at Yana in disbelief, a smile tugging at the corners of her mouth. "What? That's absurd. Why would you even think that? It's impossible." Yana herself couldn't fully comprehend why she had arrived at this conclusion. After all, Pedya was never excessively late from work, maybe just a few minutes here and there. He contributed to the family financially, and their intimate life seemed unaffected, evident by her growing belly. Yet an inexplicable feeling gnawed at her, insisting that something was amiss. She felt that he was being unfaithful, that there was someone else in his life. "I don't know, Nastya. My intuition has been off the charts. It's not a recent feeling, it's been going on for over a year. Somehow, he's changed, and he continues to change. I'm certain he's involved with someone else," Yana explained, her voice laced with uncertainty. Nastya listened attentively, her expression compassionate. "I understand, but what leads you to think that way? I mean, he seems to do everything for you. I've witnessed your relationship for a long time, and the way you two interact, he's completely devoted to you." "What are the changes in his habits?" Yana asked, intrigued by Nastya's statement. "Well, for example, he used to enjoy cooking and trying out new recipes with me. Now he rarely steps into the kitchen and prefers takeout or frozen meals. It's like he has lost interest in our shared activities." Yana understood why Nastya was concerned. These changes in behavior, coupled with the evasiveness and strange phone calls, could indeed indicate something deeper. It was natural for her to be worried about the state of her relationship, especially when she was expecting a child. "Nastya, have you tried talking to him about your concerns? Communication is key in any relationship, and it's important to express your feelings and fears openly." Nastya sighed and looked down, playing with her fingers. "I've tried, but he always brushes it off or says I'm overthinking. I don't know how to make him understand that these things are affecting me, and I'm scared to push too hard and create more distance between us." Yana nodded sympathetically, understanding the delicate balance Nastya was trying to maintain. It was complicated, but she knew that burying these concerns would only breed more uncertainty and unhappiness. Maybe it's time to have a calm, honest conversation with him, expressing your worries and making it clear how you feel. It's crucial to work together to find a solution and address any underlying issues that might be causing this distance. Nastya took a deep breath, considering Yana's advice. She knew it wouldn't be easy, but she also understood that there was no other way forward. "You're right, Yana. I need to confront this. I can't keep ignoring these signs. It's going to be difficult, but for the sake of our relationship and our future as a family, I have to face it. Thank you for being here for me." Yana smiled warmly, offering her support. "Always, Nastya. Remember, you deserve happiness and honesty in your relationship. Don't be afraid to fight for it." Jana pondered for a moment. It's not evident right away. Take, for instance, how he used to smoke on the balcony when we first moved in, but now he prefers smoking near the entrance or on the landing. When I asked him why, he mentioned convenience. "Oh, come on, Jana. You're pregnant. He's just trying to keep you safe. You should be grateful that the balcony smoke doesn't enter the room." "You have a balcony in your bedroom," reassured her friend. Yeah, but he started doing that even before I was pregnant, Jana expressed, a tinge of disappointment in her voice. And before that, we always greeted each other, said goodnight, and he would give me a gentle kiss and hug before going to sleep. It's all changed now. Nastya sighed, already tired of the conversation, but understanding the need to comfort her friend. Jana, all men are like that. At first, it's all lovey-dovey, but eventually it fades away. They can't be perfect all the time. Don't make things up. Petya loves you, and you're just imagining things. No, Nastya, I'm not imagining it. Sometimes it feels like I'm annoying him, although he never says anything, Jana confessed. Nastya attempted to justify her friend's concerns and calm her down. Jana, maybe he's just tired from work. That could be it. Why do you keep overthinking everything? Besides, it's normal for spouses to annoy each other sometimes. You've been married for 5 years, remember? It's nothing out of the ordinary. You talk about it as if you've been married yourself, Jana retorted. Well, I haven't, but I'm a woman too, so I do have some understanding, Nastya defended herself. Jana's irritation grew as she listed more examples. Why does he shave in the morning before work instead of before going to bed? And why does he shower when he comes home rather than before going to sleep? It's almost like he's been working at a construction site instead of sitting in an air-conditioned office all day. And the way he drowns himself in perfume, it's as if he robbed a perfume store. Jana's frustration was clearly evident. She sensed a lack of support from her friend, a feeling that lingered despite her expectations. As she expressed her concerns about her husband's excessive use of perfume, the response was far from empathetic. Oh, come on, it's not a big deal. He just wants to smell good. What's wrong with that? Her friend exclaimed dismissively. Frustration grew within her. It's not that simple. I've asked him countless times to tone down the perfume. I can't stand the strong scents, especially when he's headed to work. It feels intentional, like he's doing it on purpose. And why are you always taking his side? Nastya hesitated, carefully selecting her words. I'm not defending him. I'm looking out for you. I don't want you to jeopardize your marriage over something trivial. I live in the same building, see him often on the stairs. If there were any suspicious behavior, I would have told you, but there's been nothing. Doesn't that count for something? Jana eyed her friend skeptically, finding her words peculiar and unfounded. Are you suggesting you eavesdrop on neighbors through the peephole? How would you even know? Stop making things up. No, I can't take it anymore. He's coming home today, and I'll do it. I'll check his phone for any evidence. Suit yourself, Nastya said with a sigh, but I strongly advise against it. I have to go now. My mom is waiting for me. Why did I even come here? Can you lend me some sugar? I don't feel like going to the store. Jana handed her a glass of sugar as Nastya left. Instead of feeling relieved after confiding in her friend, Jana's mind became even more conflicted. She couldn't pinpoint why, but the conversation didn't alleviate her doubts. It heightened them. Nastya left Jana's apartment and immediately dialed Petya's number as she walked towards the elevator. She urgently advised him to clean his phone before returning home, revealing that Jana had expressed her suspicions and intended to monitor his phone that day. Nastya also urged him to delete any incriminating pictures. She requested that they have a brief conversation at her place after work since her parents were out, and it would be a good opportunity to discuss their situation. Petya was shocked by Nastya's words, but still followed her advice and cleaned his phone. He decided not to carry it with him throughout the day, allowing his wife a chance to check it if she wanted to. In the evening, he crossed paths with Nastya, who proceeded to inform him of the signs Jana had noticed, indicating that he was involved with another woman. Nastya implored him to find a way to fix the situation and calm Jana down. Upon returning home, Petya was greeted with a delicious dinner, like always. However, he sensed that his wife was being distant and slightly moody. Though he understood the cause of her behavior, he hesitated to ask about it. For now, divorce wasn't part of his plan, especially since Yana was pregnant. Leaving a pregnant woman was not something he considered to be honorable or masculine. Petya couldn't help but feel that he and Yana had grown apart recently. However, he believed that Nastya was not the reason behind their distance, but rather the apartment that his parents had bought solely for Yana, excluding him from any decision-making regarding their living situation. We gifted her the deed after they got married, which unfortunately left him with nothing. It really hurt him, even though they never discussed it directly. However, things changed when they moved in and started renovating. Petya noticed a change in himself, and there was also a neighbor named Nastya who caught his attention. Initially, she became friends with his wife, but eventually formed a different kind of friendship with him. Nastya was incredibly kind and understanding. She was always there to lend an ear and even express sympathy when needed. She never failed to praise and admire him, understanding his desires and making him feel wonderful. This was something that Petya felt was lacking in his relationship with Jana. Although his wife did praise him as well, the issue with the apartment somehow diminished the value of her kindness in his eyes. Nastya, on the other hand, was different. There was no ulterior motive, only genuine affection and trust. During dinner, Petya casually asked his wife about her day. However, he listened with only one ear, distracted by his thoughts. After dinner, he kissed Jana's cheek and thanked her, expecting her to be happy. However, he noticed an odd look in her eyes instead. That evening, Petya didn't immediately head to the shower after work, even though he didn't have any plans with Nastya that day. Sometimes, they would meet at her house when her parents weren't around or find moments in the car. Other times, they would use the apartment across the street, where Nastya took care of the plants and fed the cat. The landlady worked as a flight attendant and was rarely home, so Nastya kindly offered the place as a safe haven for them. It was a thoughtful gift from a kind neighbor. Before going to sleep, Petya went through his bedtime routine. He meticulously washed and even took the time to shave, hoping it would please his wife. However, instead of expressing contentment, she gave him a scrutinizing look. Sensing something was amiss, Petya decided to step out onto the balcony for a smoke. As he pondered, a confusing jumble of thoughts consumed Yana's mind. She no longer wanted to invade his privacy by checking his phone, yet all the pieces of a troubling puzzle seemed to be fitting together. Finally returning from the balcony, Petya slid into bed and tenderly kissed his wife goodnight. His words were uttered softly, just as usual. However, Yana looked at him with disbelief and cautiously asked, "Are you having an affair with Nastya?" Petya immediately sensed he had been caught red-handed, but was unable to fathom how Yana had uncovered his secret. Overwhelmed by the situation, he couldn't think of a better course of action than to outright deny everything. "Sunshine, I'm really not involved with anyone else, I promise," he replied calmly, trying to dismiss her suspicions as hormonal exaggerations. He turned over and feigned sleep, hoping she would calm down and drop the subject. But Yana wasn't about to let it go so easily. She calmly climbed out of bed and approached him. "Sleeping tonight won't resolve this. Don't make a fool out of me. Have the courage to admit it if you've been unfaithful," she pleaded, searching for honesty and openness. Petya realized he couldn't outmaneuver her with his words alone. Feeling cornered, he decided to be brutally honest. "All right, let's say you're right. Just for argument's sake. Even though it's a complete lie. What happens next?" he questioned, curious to hear her response. Yana locked eyes with her husband, stunned by his audacity. This was not the affectionate Petyanka she knew and adored. He seemed like a different person altogether, distant and cold. She mustered her strength and asked the question that burned within her. "What's next? But first, I need to understand why. What was missing? What led you to seek solace in someone else's arms?" She longed for an explanation, desperate to understand what had gone wrong in their relationship for him to seek comfort elsewhere. Everything seemed almost perfect for them. They chose to marry out of love and not for foolish reasons. For the initial 3 years, they lived happily together. Their parents eventually bought them an apartment, although it wasn't an immediate action. The burden of the mortgage was not something they had to worry about. They were able to live and enjoy their lives. And then there was Nastya. Petya frowned with anger and responded, "Did you really think I would tolerate the way your parents treated me? Their actions were humiliating." Yena looked at him, trying to comprehend the extent of his emotions. She asked, "How did they humiliate you?" Petya replied, "By buying the apartment for us, but registering it solely under your name." "Who does that?" It felt like they were trying to drive us apart. It was only a matter of time. Jana was taken aback by this revelation. She had sensed that Petya wasn't entirely comfortable with the situation, but she had never considered it to be humiliating. It was a new perspective for her. "Why didn't you leave immediately if you were so offended? Why didn't you leave me, or did you wait until I got pregnant? You must be a poor, unhappy man. My parents gave us a place to live, and yet you're still resentful. And by the way, do you know why they only gave it to me? I specifically told them not to do it, but they wouldn't listen." Petya was taken aback by this revelation. He had no idea that she had asked her parents to change their decision, although it didn't really matter now. Reluctantly, he asked, "And why?" "Because 3 years ago, at the wedding, you openly flirted with my cousin in front of everyone," she replied. "My parents thought you were being disrespectful, and I tried to defend you, but they saw everything and wouldn't listen." Petya was shocked. He couldn't remember much from that night, as he had been drinking heavily. The realization hit him that it was his own fault. In a contemptuous tone, he asked, "Why didn't you tell me this sooner?" "Because you never asked, and I was foolish enough to convince myself that everything was fine," she retorted. Jana felt her nervousness grow. She knew she had to calm down, especially considering the child. She went to the kitchen and poured herself a glass of water, finding some solace in it. One question continuously echoed in her mind. What should she do next? She was filled with a deep sense of resentment. Nastya, her supposed friend, and even Petya, her husband, had betrayed her. It was too much to bear. She sat at the table, attempting to gather her thoughts. Deep down, she already knew what her decision would be, but she understood just how difficult it would be to follow through with it. After roughly 30 minutes, Petya couldn't bear it any longer and entered the kitchen. At last, his conscience began to gnaw at him. He had believed that Yana had asked her parents for a gift, thinking that he was punishing her by sleeping with someone else. However, he realized now that he had only dug himself into a deeper hole. "Jan, let's talk," he suggested. "We've already discussed everything." "There's nothing more to say," she replied sadly. "We're married. You're pregnant. We have a baby on the way. We have a lot to talk about," her husband insisted. "You know, you should have thought about all of that when you slept with my friend. Now it's all just a mess," she said, her tone filled with bitterness. Petya squatted down beside her, attempting to touch her knees, but Yana recoiled, jumping up. The mere thought of his hands having touched another woman repulsed her. Perhaps he had even been with someone earlier today, and now he was attempting to reach out to her. "Petya, pack your things and leave. It's over between us," she stated firmly, though her broken demeanor contradicted her words. I felt devastated. Jana had always imagined that they would grow old together. Just yesterday, she was brimming with happiness, believing she had a wonderful family and a baby on the way. But now, everything was about to change. "Don't tell me you're going to kick me out in the middle of the night," I said anxiously. "You won't have to go far. It's just a few floors down, and they're waiting for you." Jana replied, her sadness evident in her voice. No one is waiting for me there. Nastya didn't want you to know. She's just a friend. A friend of yours too," I confessed. A good friend, huh? Do you honestly believe that she's been pursuing you all this time because she didn't plan on being with you? You clearly don't know women well. Fine, go on then. She'll be more than happy to take you in, Jana retorted. But I don't want that, I protested. It doesn't matter. Just go away, Jana replied coldly. Feeling a mix of emotions, I made my way to the bedroom, got dressed, but couldn't bring myself to pack my things just yet. Without saying goodbye, I left the apartment and headed towards Nastya's place. I hoped she would at least let me stay for the night. Nastya was still awake, consumed by worries. She had a feeling that I might reconcile with my wife, and she didn't want me to leave her before the birth. It didn't feel humane. However, deep down, she sensed that things might not go according to plan. Her intuition was confirmed when the doorbell rang close to midnight. Nastya peeped through the hole and saw me standing there. "What's wrong?" Nastya asked simply. "Gemma kicked me out. She found out everything. Will you let me in?" I pleaded. Nastya hadn't intended to kick him out. She had simply expected him to come downstairs to smoke and fill her in on what happened. But it turned out that Janka was more perceptive than they had anticipated. She couldn't be fooled. Even though Nastya had hoped that her husband's positive changes would make her suspicions unfounded, she was mistaken. "Will you tell me what happened?" the girl asked. "I didn't realize it myself. I followed your advice and did everything you said," he replied. But then she confronted me directly and asked, "Are you sleeping with Nastya?" I tried to explain myself, but she wouldn't let it go. "And that was it?" Nastya inquired. "No, she also asked me why I betrayed her," he admitted. This piqued Nastya's curiosity. Although she and Petya had conversed at length about various topics, he rarely spoke about his family. She didn't appreciate this lack of openness. "What did you tell her?" Nastya questioned. Today, Petya seemed particularly distraught. He had lost his composure and forgotten to be cautious. There was a reason why he kept his family life private. He was ashamed to admit that in his own home, he felt insignificant and nameless, or at least, that's what he believed. The man confided in his mistress, sharing every detail of what had happened. He felt the need to come clean, as it seemed to relieve his guilty conscience. Little did he know, he was making a crucial mistake. After Petya finished his story, Nastya calmly asked a question. "So the apartment belongs to Yana, not you?" she inquired. "Yes, but what does it matter now?" Petya replied, unaware of the significant difference it made. Nastya started envisioning Yana leaving and herself taking her place. She was determined not to let Petya look at other women and believed she was better suited to be his wife. However, everything had now changed, as the two-bedroom apartment would remain with his wife. Nastya smiled and said, "Indeed, it's no problem. But you can't stay at my place tonight. My mom will be back from her shift soon, and my dad will return from the country in the morning. You'll have to leave." That night, for the first time in his life, Pyotr slept in his car in a parking lot. When he returned home in the morning, Yana had already packed her belongings. She didn't want to hear any explanations. Such actions were unforgivable. A few months later, Yana gave birth to a child, but by then, Petya had already moved to another city. He hadn't even planned to maintain contact with his ex-wife and preferred to forget about their daughter. Yana didn't pursue child support or search for him. She wished to erase the whole situation and the man from her life forever. Consequently, she put the apartment up for sale, and buyers emerged shortly after. Yana and her daughter moved to a different apartment, far away from Nastya and the nightmare they had endured. Yana had always believed in a woman's intuition, the sixth sense that detects if the man she loves is being unfaithful. She made a promise to herself never to doubt her instincts and intuition again.